Hey guys, Victor here, coming at you again with another deck profile. And for today's video, we're going to be doing an updated Tearlament list. Now, unlike the last list, this one is not going to be featuring the Destiny Hero engine, which I basically just used to make Pilgrim Reaper in order to mill 5 as often as possible. Just because I wanted to try some other stuff out and just make it a little bit more consistent, because let's face it, there are certain situations where you're just going to end up breaking on the malicious and you just can't do anything, right? Which is unfortunate, but it's just the risk that comes to playing the engine. And it's why I said that if you can afford it, the Fiendsmith engine is pretty much everything that the malicious engine is, but just infinitely more consistent and has way more grind game. But this video isn't about those. We decided to try some other stuff out, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. So with that out of the way, let's jump straight into it. As always, we're going to be starting off with the monster lineup, and because this is a Tearlament deck, we're going to be basically maxing out on every single Tearlament monster available to us. So as a result, we're playing the 3 Tearlaments Reinoheart, which is pretty much the heart and soul of the deck, right? If you don't have access to this, you're going to be in trouble, because it really just does open up pretty much every single play, right? Whether you're trying to fusion summon with it, link summon with it, exceed summon with it, whatever. And then on normal or special, it's able to send any tier monster except itself from deck to the graveyard. If it's sent to the graveyard by card effect, you can bring it back by discarding a tier card from your hand, and then you get like all the bonus effects. If you send a Sulliek, you get to search a monster. You send a Metanoise, you get to add one of your graveyard tiers back to your hand, and just like so on and so on. Like this card, you have to play three of it if you want to play pure Tearlament. Then to accompany our 3 Reinohearts, we're playing 3 Tearlaments Kashtira, as it's a quick effect to be able to special summon itself during either player's main phase, and all you have to do is banish a tier card from either your hand or your graveyard, and then what it does is on summon it mills 3 cards either from your deck or your opponent's deck, and it's typically going to be your deck, right? Let's be honest. Just because you want to hit your cards in the graveyard as often as possible. And then when it's sent to the graveyard by card effect, you get to mill 2 more cards, so it's a potential mill 5, and by potential, I mean you're going to get it pretty much every single time. So yeah, 3 tier cash. And then for the 1-ofs, we're playing the 1 Scheiren, the 1 Havnis, and the 1 Merrli. They all are able to mill 3 provided you meet their necessary requirements. And then more importantly, these are the ones that allow us to fusion summon, which, I mean, this is a fusion-based deck, even though we're not going to be playing cards like Polymerization. So, these cards are pretty important to the deck, and there's a very good reason why they're all limited currently, because they are just that good. Then that's it for the tier monsters. And then for the supplemental engines, we're playing the 3 Imsety Glory of Horus along with the 1 Hapi Guidance of Horus. The Horus engine is basically just there to give us access to Zombie Vampire, which in turn allows us to mill 4 more cards. But even if you're not having even if you don't have access to the Zombie Vampire, right? And let's say it's because they ripped it away with Kashtira Unicorn, or you've already used it and you have no way to put it back, which, I mean, you do have ways, but let's just pretend you don't. These are still incredible cards on their own, being a 3k beatstick and a 2400 beatstick with very useful effects that just make dealing with your board pretty obnoxious for your opponents. And if you, for whatever reason, just get hit by like a Fulos or whatever, and you don't really feel like committing to the extra deck, that's perfectly fine, just because, like I said, these cards, both of their effects are extremely useful at just helping you control like the momentum of the game. So you'll be pretty happy just leaving them there and then going to town on your next turn. So yeah, the Horus engine, very, very valued to the deck. Then we're still playing 2 Beastking of the Swamps. Now, because Bahamut Shark is banned, this card did lose some effectiveness, but I'm still opting to play it just because it is a level 4 monster, which means that we can still make rank 4s. And if we don't play the Beastking of the Swamp, that means we're not going to be able to access cards like Tearlaments Ruclos, which we are going to be playing, by the way. Shocker, right? Surprise, surprise. No, but if you're watching my decks, you've pretty much come to know that I do enjoy playing Ruclos. So we are going to be playing 2 Beastking of the Swamps just for that reason. Not much needs to be said. These are literally just here because they're King of the Swamp, right? They can become any other monster, and because Kitkalos is banned, we're forced to run this. And then for the next 2 we're playing 2 Kashtira Fenrir. So normally I'd be doing like a 1-1 line where I play 1 Fenrir with 1 Pressure Planet, but with the way that the current and upcoming format looks, it appears that Droll and Lockbird is going to be seeing a lot more play. And as a result, that means that you pretty much have to rely on cards that do something immediately on activation or on play. And Fenrir is one of those, because you just special summon it, you get a free body in the form of Fenrir, and then its effect will allow you to search out your tier cache. As opposed to if you start with Pressure Planet, right? You activate the Pressure Planet, you get hit by Droll, and then you can still summon out the Fenrir, but you lose out on its search of getting the tier cache. And that search is honestly really important just to be able to try and access your engines. So as a result, That's why we're playing the 2 Fenrir instead. And it's still like an incredibly obnoxious card to also deal with, right? As if your opponent decides to activate a monster effect, you get to banish one of their face-up cards face down. So yeah, this card, it's kind of insane. Then for the 1-ofs, we're playing the 1 Mudora, the Sword Oracle, literally just because it has better stats than Keldo. The Keldo is always in the side for when we're playing a graveyard deck for sure. But yeah, the 1 Mudora, sometimes you just need to recycle your resources, and this is the card to do it. And then lastly, we're playing the 1 Helshaddoll Hollow, as it allows us to mill more cards, but this also in turn allows us to have access to cards like Shaddoll Winda, which can sometimes just straight up win games on its own. And something like Winda also prevents your opponent from hitting you with a card like Nib, which is pretty important on the chance that you don't have access to cards like Tearlaments Reinoheart, right? As Nibiru has to summon 2 monsters, and because of Winda's restriction, if your opponent only being able to special summon once, they're just unable to activate it. So yeah, pretty useful. And then milling, like I said, this card also mills, and that's basically why I play this over Shaddoll Beast, because while drawing is good, this is a milling deck, not a drawing deck, and we'd much rather have our cards in the graveyard in most situations. So with that, that's the monster lineup, and now we can finally move on to the spell and trap portion of the deck. Now that we're on the spell and trap portion of the video, I just want to briefly state, normally you'd be seeing me play way more monsters than spells and traps, but for the first time in a long time, we're actually outnumbering the monsters with the amount of spells and traps we play, and I feel pretty good about it. But even so, we're going to be starting off with, of course, our Primeval planet Perlereino, which we are, of course, playing at 3. As on activation, it searches any tier monster, it boosts your tiers and fuses by 500 attack, and it's also able to pop cards when a tier monster gets shuffled back into the deck. So, you know, just a really, really good card. Then to accompany our 3 planets, we're playing 3 Tearlaments Scream, which when a monster is normal or special summoned and you control a face-up tier monster, you're able to mill 3 cards. And then for the rest of this turn, all your opponent's monsters lose 500 attack. So the 500 attack honestly does matter a lot, because it makes your opponent's monsters have like, obviously they're already going to have a little bit more of a difficult time running over your board. But then because their attacks are so awkward, they're going to have an even more difficult time just being able to finish the game off. So this will pretty much always just like buy us a turn, in addition to just providing us a good general consistency. And then when it's sent to the graveyard by card effect, you get to search for any of your tier traps. Then, for the final 3 of spell in the deck, we're going to be playing 3 Forbidden Droplet. So this is something that I haven't been playing in tier for a while, and I pretty much figured that there aren't really like any negates in the sense of like spells and traps, right? Most of the time you're playing against a deck, it's pretty much just always going to be like a monster negate. So being able to go like, I don't know, with a Foolish Burial, they'll tend to like ash it, and then you can go chain Droplet, right? And then you can send the Foolish Burial plus like another card, and then just like negate their monsters and deal with their boards pretty much effectively, or just more effectively than you normally would, and then just be able to play the game from there is honestly just a pretty huge deal. And I don't know, like I feel like this card is just so good, and it's only going to get better as the format progresses. So yeah, 3 Forbidden Droplet. I'm a very, very big fan of this card right now, especially because we're not playing any hand traps in the main. So we do, as a result, tend to rely a little bit more on cards like these to break our opponent's board. Then to go with our 3, or that's it for the 3 ofs, I mean. And then for the 2 ofs, we're just playing 1 card at 2, being the 2 King Sarcophagus, so that we can actually play with our Horus engine, as you need this face up on the field in order to bring back your Horus monsters from the graveyard. Then for the 1 ofs, playing the 1 Triple Tactics Talent to be able to further break our opponent's board and just disrupt their plays in general. The 1 Called by the Grave, so that we don't auto lose to the 1 of Shifter. The 1 Tearlaments Grief to be able to special summon out a tier from either our grave or our deck. And then if it's sent to the graveyard by card effect, you're also able to search, or you're able to add one of your banished tier traps, which happens pretty frequently and, you know, is pretty valuable. But for the most part, we're using this to be able to special summon and just further extend. We're playing the 1 Foolish Burial to become any monster, and then the 1 Foolish Burial Goods to usually send either like a Trivikarma or one of our Tearlaments Sulliek, depending on what our hand looks like. And with that, that's the spell lineup, and now we can finally move on to the traps. And then starting with the traps, we finally are moving on up to 3 Tearlaments Sulliek. I just feel like I always want this card in my hand, right, in addition to like a tier monster. And by playing 3, we're able to more effectively search out our tier cards. And by tier cards, I mean our tier monsters, whether it's our Tearlaments Kashtira or Scheiren or Reinoheart, whatever. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this addition. I don't feel like it clogs too much. And even if you do draw multiples, all you have to do is send a Reinoheart to the graveyard at some point, and then you can get rid of them and then trigger their search effects. And yeah, you're basically just good to go. Then to join our 3 Sullieks, we're playing 1 Tearlaments Metanoise. The Book of Moon effect doesn't really matter. What we really care about is the adding back from the graveyard to our hand effect. as we did lose access to Totally Awesome, which means that we did lose a bit of grind game because we can no longer go Toad Negate, then add back to your cache to mill 3 more cards, right? So we have to rely on something like Metanoise to refill our hand for the next turn or even during our opponent's turn, which absolutely matters. And then lastly, we're playing the one Trivikarma to be able to search out every single one of our Tearlaments spells and traps, because that's what this card does. And with that, that's the main deck. Should be 40 cards like always, and now we can finally move on to the extra deck. Now that we're on the extra deck portion of the video, we'll be starting off with the Exceed monsters first. So as a result, we're playing one Time Thief Redoer, which is just a phenomenal generic card, right? As it's able to take cards from the top of our opponent's deck and put it under it as material during each standby phase. So you're basically just taking away precious resources every single time. And then depending on what you take, it gets a different effects, right? So if it's a monster, you can banish this card into the end phase. If it's a spell, you get to draw a card. And then if it's a trap, you get to place a face-up card on your opponent's side of the field back to the top of the deck, which all three of those effects are honestly really solid. And not only that, this card also allows you to detach materials as part of the effect, right? And that actually matters so much for cards like Scheiren and Reinoheart, because it means you're going to be able to trigger them to either fusion summon or just bring them back and generate more advantage. So yeah, I just love Time Thief Redoer in a deck like this. Then the other rank 4, we're playing number 60 Dugares, the Timeless. It can either boost your monster's attack, it can bring back a monster from the graveyard, or you can draw 2 and then discard 1. And for the most part, we're going to be using the draw 2, discard a card effect, as it just allows us to cycle, draw more good cards, and then get rid of the bricks, right? And that's pretty important, especially in a deck that plays things like Trivikarma or Mudora, because you are going to see them in your hand, and you're not always going to have a way to get rid of them through like Imsety, right? So just having free fodder that we can get rid of at any point is always great. And then not to mention, this card also triggers every single one of your tier cards, right? So if you discard a Sulliek, a Scream, a Metanoise, a tier monster, whatever, they all get their effects. So yeah, Dugares, pretty solid. Then we're playing the one zombie vampire to mill 4 cards from both players' decks. And with how prevalent cards like Kashtira Fenrir are in the format currently, this card honestly just gets even better, because if your opponent is playing a Fenrir and you manage to hit it, you get to take it, and then that Fenrir's effect will be able to activate to be able to search your deck for usually a Tearlaments Kashtira, but there are certain situations where you add just like your own copy of Fenrir. But yeah, zombie vampire, really good. And then lastly, we're playing one Super Starslayer ty-phon Sky Crisis, because there are just some boards that you cannot break. So you just use this as a last resort to hopefully buy you another turn. And then that's it for the Exceeds. And then for the links, we're playing one Dharc, the Dark Charmer Gloomy, just to be able to take monsters from our opponent's graveyards, usually like a Bestial, right? And then from there, it's up to us if we want to exceed with it or just leave them on the field as like threatening beat sticks. But yeah, a lot of the times this is basically just there for when you're trying to go for a game or you're desperately in need of a link 2 to be able to summon something like Sprind, which we are of course playing. But we'll get more to that in a bit. Then for the other links, we're playing the one IP Masquerena, whose only goal is to either summon out the Sprind, as previously mentioned. Even though we can summon this card off of the Dark Charmer Gloomy, typically you want to use this to summon, or you typically want to summon this during your opponent's turn with the IP Masquerena. Or if you don't want to do that because you've already used it or whatever, you can also just go straight into the SP Little Knight, which is typically what you're normally going to do in most situations. But yeah, Little Knight, Sprind, both phenomenal link 2s, and that's it for the links. And then for the fusions, we're playing the one Helshaddoll Winda just to be able to floodgate our opponents a little bit harder. We're playing the Mud Dragon of the Swamp, the Gurura Wings of Resident Life, and the Predaplant Dragostapelia, as these are all monsters that we can pretty easily fusion summon into just generally throughout the course of the game, right? So they're all really good at what they do. Gurura generates resources, Mud Dragon of the Swamp, and Predaplant Dragostapelia are basically causing an infinite loop where you can just cycle into one or the other after they leave the field so that you never deck out. And yeah, you know, just really good solid cards. And if you happen to play Super Poly in the side deck or in your main deck, you know, these are traditionally called Super Poly targets, so you just have very good cards that you can summon out and hopefully beat your opponent down with. Then for the last 3 fusion monsters, we're playing one Grappa, Dragon Overlord of Dark World, which we can make through the use of King of the Swamp or Beastking of the Swamp. And it's like a pseudo negate. Like, it doesn't negate a monster's effect, but it does change their effect to your opponent discards a card. So that means we discard a card. And with everything either floating or whatever, like, this card is just really nice. Then we have Rukulos to be able to negate special summons. And then lastly, we have the Tearlaments Heart, which on special summon is able to shuffle a card on the field back into the deck that belongs to your opponent. And then if your opponent decides to get rid of this card, or if you decide to get rid of it by card effect, it's able to special summon itself back from the graveyard in addition to foolishing a card. So yeah, this card's a little silly. And with that, that's the Tearlament deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya!